You're listening to the Small and Supercharged podcast with Ria Freeman, episode 166. On today's podcast, it's a special one. I'm joined by not one, not two, but three lovely ladies. Jane Brindley, aka Horse Riding with Confidence Scotland, Emily Cole, who is Emily Cole, and Donna, who is the horse feed guru, Emily Cole Illustrations, and Donna Case, who is the horse feed guru. So thank you very much, ladies, for joining me today. I don't know which way this is going to go, but I'm excited to find out. So the reason we're all here today is to talk about a competition that we ran recently. Well, Emily ran recently and we all got involved to launch the really cool Believe in Yourself mug, which I've actually got as a print in my office, which looks at me from over yonder. And the mug is currently in the dishwasher, although you shouldn't dishwash Emily's mugs, but I am a daredevil. And we're going to talk around the Believe in Yourself theme, because as I said, we've collaborated on a competition. The lucky winner has now been announced. Well done, whoever you are. Obviously, we're recording this before the winner's been announced, but I don't know who you are. But we thought it'd be fun to talk about the Believe in Yourself theme. Obviously, we've got Jane, who is a mindset master. We have got Emily, who created the Believe in Yourself range. And then there's me and Donna. So, Emily, tell us all about you, in case anyone doesn't know you. I'm sure everybody does. And also the kind of inspiration behind the Believe in Yourself. I assume that the drawing and the print came first, and then obviously how that all developed.
Yeah, so the Believe in Yourself drawing, I don't know how many years old it is now, actually. I will sometimes draw as a means of procrastination, which is interestingly how my business started. But it would have probably been in between commission pieces of work that I just felt like I was going to draw this piece, and I just had this very strong image in my head. If you haven't seen the picture, it's like a little Shetland, and it's looking at its shadow on the wall, which is a rearing unicorn. And I just drew it and shared it without really thinking too much about it, and I quickly realized that it resonated with more people than I thought it would. Sometimes I'll think like a drawing has meaning that maybe only I'll see, but I think it became apparent that I don't know how to say. I think like I've had a few drawings in my like portfolio which I think have just resonated with people for specific reasons, and that's one of them. And it's quite a special drawing to me because I think I drew it around the idea of like believing in yourself, like finding your inner unicorn, as it were, and like just going for it. Yeah, that was a very convoluted answer, I fear, but
no, it was a great answer. It was a great answer. And didn't you say as well that when you drew it, James, who is your husband, I'm sure this is public knowledge, not that James is your husband, but that he said it was
surprise,
surprise, James, that he thought it was the drawing that kind of you almost drew for yourself the most?
Yeah, so there's like a couple of drawings that he'll go, oh, I can tell that one actually means a bit more to you than it just being a drawing. So like a couple of other drawings I've done, there's one called Sweet Dreams, which was based on a horse that James and I like used to live opposite, or like the I'm Here drawing, if you've seen that one. But the Believe in Yourself, he was like, I can definitely tell that one was more than just a drawing for you. Like there's something going on behind the scenes when you drew that, more than just trying to be comedic about a horse situation. Like he's quite observant when it comes to things like that. So he spotted that one.
And although now, since I did the introduction and then said, and then there's me and Donna, I felt bad the whole time, because as soon as Emily said, wouldn't it be good to do a competition with the unicorn? We have to ask Donna because she is a unicorn. It was honestly, didn't it? I'm not In the nicest.
I mean, yeah, I literally went, Donna likes unicorns.
And I think as well, when you were on the podcast on your own and we talked about your whole journey to get to where you are now, you knew from like a really, really young age that this is what you wanted to be. So having that kind of belief in yourself, I'll try and weave that in a few more times, has obviously got you here, which is really cool.
Yeah, so I knew from a really young age that I wanted to be a nutritionist when I was older. I was 14 years old when I entered a pony magazine competition. And it was just one of those multiple choice things. And it was all about horse feed. And as part of it, there was also this article on a nutritionist who worked for Spillers, actually. And so I thought, wow, this is really interesting. And I decided that I wanted to win that competition. Basically, sort of, if you got 80%, you got a red rosette. If it was 70, you got a blue. And it went down like that. I was like, I've got to have a red rosette. So anyway, I got all my little kid pony club books out and sent it off. And then a couple of months later, I'd sort of semi-forgotten about it. Not the fact I wanted to be a nutritionist, but about the rosette and whatever. Through the post comes this Spillers Pony Club certificate with a red rosette, and I was just so thrilled. And I think that was the real moment that I committed. I'm definitely doing this when I'm older. And I blue tacked it to my wardrobe, and I put the rosette right next to it. And so it was one of the first things I'd see every morning and the last thing at night amongst all of my horse posters, all the rest of it. And yeah, I just became totally obsessed with that's what I was going to do. And, you know, in the back of my mind, it was never I hope I do that, or, you know, perhaps I'll do that. Because actually in this magazine article, it said there weren't very many nutritionists. And actually back then there weren't many brands. So we've got loads of different horse feed brands, haven't we, now? But back then there was only about 3 brands. And so there weren't many nutritionists at all in the country. But that never crossed my mind for a moment. And it was just, no, okay, you'll do this. So I worked backwards. I said, well, what A levels, what degree will I need? What A levels will I need? What GCSEs? I mean, I was literally in year 9 at this point. And by the age of 21, literally the very last day after I'd done my last exam at uni, I received the phone call to say I had a job working for Spillers. You know, the very certificate and rosette that I mean, some people might call it manifestations. Some people could, you know, just saying it was a goal that you made into a plan. Whatever it was, I really believe that if you set a goal and make a plan, you can achieve whatever you want. And, you know, from my perspective, it doesn't matter whether that plan could be just going off to ride on a beach and feel confident getting on your horse. It doesn't have to be this massive thing like riding around badminton. It might be that. It could be so many different things. It could just be I don't know, being able to go for a hack with your friends and enjoy doing so. All sorts of people have lots of different goals, and I'm really all for the whole believe in yourself thing. It is something that I'm quite passionate about, to be honest.
I mean, I think that moves us beautifully over to Jane, because Jane is a mindset, well, you're not just a mindset coach, you're all the things. And obviously it'd be great to know about how when you believe in yourself, but also you work with so many people who need that inner belief and come to you to help get it, don't you?
Yeah, I do. And for those of you who don't know me, I run a little business called Horse Riders Confidence Scotland. And I work with riders at all levels, helping them with riding confidence and with mindset for competition and performance, whatever they come with. From a psychological point of view, I will try my best to help them. So yeah, so probably the majority of the clients I see have some issue around self-belief, whether it's lack of confidence or whether it's lack of sort of straightforward self-belief for achieving their goals or being able to achieve their goals. So yeah, it's a hugely common issue, I think, with many people. And certainly personally, there have been times when my self-belief has gone up and gone down and changed. It's not a constant that we have right through our life. You either believe in yourself or you don't. I think it does vary depending on the situation you find yourself in, the things that you're aiming for, the goals that you set yourself, and so on. But as Donna said, if we set ourselves goals and get the processes in place that we need to work towards achieving those goals, there is absolutely no reason why we won't achieve them.
And I think it's really good to put it like yourself and Donna have, because I think that goal setting is something that it is very important, but I think there is a lot of different thoughts on it, and some do seem to involve just like thinking really hard, but in my experience, thinking really hard on its own isn't the most useful. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jane. But the thinking hard, the making a plan, the working back, and focusing on it and keeping it front of mind, but making sure you're taking those steps forward too.
Definitely. And with goal setting, it's always, from my point of view, it's very much process goals, performance goals, and outcome goals. And the process goals are sort of, if you like, at the bottom of the tree, the roots of the tree. So if you get those in place, the progress will happen, and then the outcome will happen. And the processes that you do, these are the things that you do on a week by week, day by day, month by month basis. And those are the things over which you've got the most control. Particularly in horse riding, you sometimes, often don't have a huge amount of control over the outcome. Say your outcome is a top 10 placing in a B event or something like that. That's dependent on a huge amount of factors which are out with your control. Everybody else's performance, the weather, the course, the judge's opinion, etc., etc., etc. You've got minimal control over those things. But what you have got control over is your training, your preparation, your feeding of the horse, the tack that you're using, everything that you're doing to allow you to work towards achieving your goals. And then you're measuring your progress along the way. If you're not making progress, and you go back to the basics and make changes and then restart.
But I think that, as you say, that I know that's the whole point of the podcast, and I'm probably going to call it believe in yourself. But as you say, knowing what you can control and taking that on and going, I can be the best at these things, and having that belief in yourself because of all the work you've done, regardless of the outcome. I know we did a session in Mastermind not that long ago when you were saying, how we attribute success and failure and how we manage it. And if you're linking that to other things you can't control, that's you're kind of setting yourself up for a downfall, aren't you? But you can work on yourself and have that toolkit and those inbuilt beliefs that you've worked really hard on.
Yeah, and it's not always easy. We have to accept that it isn't always easy. But one of the things that I really like comes from a psychologist called Albert Ellis, who founded Rational Emotive Behaviour Therapy, which is kind of closely related to CBT, which many people will have heard of. But in my opinion, it's slightly kind of kinder and softer than CBT. But one of his phrases, his ideas is all about what he calls USA, which is unconditional self-acceptance. So it's learning to accept ourselves as unique and fallible human beings with strengths, with weaknesses, with challenges, with good points, bad points, but basically as a unique individual. And I think he says it can take a lifetime to accept that, to learn to accept that. And it's not, and I have to stress this, it's not letting yourself off the hook for bad behavior or for not trying or anything like that. It is coming down to the very essence of, I accept myself for who I am, me. Mm-hmm. This is me. I'm a unique human being with all my experience, all my appearance, all my, everything about me is unique. And learning to accept yourself as that unique individual.
Now, I know that I think another thing that's quite funny is that with a lot of the work that I do when I mentor people or people in Mastermind, and I can see, and I'm sure that all of you can see, amazing things in other people. And when they say, oh, I wish I could do this, and I sit there going, you absolutely can. I know you can. You've got all of the jigsaw pieces. You know, I know you can do this. But it's sometimes very difficult to believe in ourselves, even when all of the puzzle pieces are there showing us that we can do it. There's this niggling little voice, isn't there, that goes, but can you?
Yeah.
But can you do it?
I know.
So I thought it might be quite fun, hopefully fun, to share a kind of moment when the sort of believing in ourselves and sort of not putting on your brave pants, but kind of that worked quite well. Of course, it doesn't, I mean, not to say it doesn't always work well, because if you are connecting your success to that you did the steps and you got the outcome, then you kind of always succeed. So I thought, I've told this story a few times, but up until about 4 years ago, I always thought I was really bad at public speaking. And I'm not coming to you now saying I'm now amazing, like eat your heart out, Brené Brown. I'm really not that good. But I was convinced I was horribly awful at it, because I kind of had done a few things that hadn't gone how I wanted them to go. I mean, still quite well, and people were still happy with it, but it wasn't great, in my opinion. So I thought opportunities kept coming up, and I kept having this kind of thing that really I wasn't a very good public speaker, but actually quite an awful public speaker. So one day, and I don't know what possessed me, because this is not the normal sequence of events. You think, oh, I'm not very good at something, I'll upskill, I'll do this. So I applied to give a TEDx talk, because I thought that'll sort it. And then the next bit was I was accepted to give the TEDx talk, and I thought, oh God, this has taken a turn. And I actually did give, well, I gave 2 in the end, because I thought the first one was a fluke. But I think what was interesting is that, again, I still wouldn't say I'm an amazing public speaker, but I'm not bad. But I was stood there on this little red dot, which you stand on if you give a TEDx talk, and I started to get quite panicked, because you do when it dawns on you that you've just really not thought this through at all, and yet you're stood there. And I just thought, if it goes wrong, like really wrong, I open my mouth and no words come out, or something awful happens, what will really actually happen in my life? Will my house evaporate, or will I not have a job? And I realized that the risk of it is basically non-existent. It wasn't a risk. If I went and it went badly, it didn't really matter. I mean, my ego would get a bit bashed, but to be honest, I've worked with horses for long enough, it gets bashed every few minutes. So, and at that point I felt incredibly calm about it all, because I realized that it didn't matter. As in one way it mattered a lot, but another way the outcome didn't have any connection to stuff that really, really mattered to me. And bizarrely, that kind of did give me this bizarre belief in what I was about to do, because it didn't matter. I'm sure that probably will show I've got some kind of issue. But it was great. And I borderline enjoyed it. And so I applied for another one, and they said, yeah, why not? It was a bit longer, the process, had to send in videos and stuff. And again, I was kind of going up onto the stage. I disconnected my microphone by accident, because I itched my face and the microphone fell on the floor just before I was about to climb up onto the red dot. So I thought, strong start. And again, it was fine, because I realized that the risk, it wasn't a real risk. It wasn't a life and death thing. I'm sure that that's probably not the way one should conquer your fears, by just going all in. But then I didn't feel it wasn't a fear that had really a particularly bad consequence. Not like if you're scared of something that's going to get you, in a lot of trouble. So ladies, who fancies sharing a story about when they believed in themselves, what they did, and how it paid off?
So I think like fairly recent, within the last couple of years, I used to work from home. I had all my stock here, and it was chaos. There were just boxes and boxes. I had packing peanuts filling up the shower cubicle and the bath. Like if you wanted to find a card, you had to lift 8 boxes to get to that. And it became increasingly apparent that I needed to make the real choice that I need to accept that this was a business, you know, like 6 years or however long it was here, and believe in myself that I was capable of running a business and seeking like office premises. And that would like, it was quite a big mind block, I think, because I was like, well, what if I suddenly can't afford it? What if I find something and it's wrong? What if people look at me and they think, what on earth is she doing with the job? Like, she's not a real business person. Because you know how you get these offices, like windows and corridors. Like, I had a real like mind block. Like someone would walk in and be like, well, she's not doing proper work. She's just sat there drawing ponies. Like, but I had to do it. And that like I was being pushed at one end, and no matter what, at some point I was going to have to take that step. So I did it. And sometimes you like I know that I've talked about with this believe in yourself drawing as well, that when I look at it, I often remember that sometimes the first step is the scariest step, because you don't know necessarily where your foot's going to land sometimes. And then eventually when you get into a pattern of like just challenging yourself a bit more each day, like you do get into a routine of like what that feeling feels like, and the fact that you know that you can overcome it. But the first step is often the most daunting, because it literally is the unknown. But that you do have to just trust that you're very capable of like being successful, and also be coping if or when things don't go the way you expect. Like if, for example, an unexpected bill came in, I know that I'm capable of like managing things to accommodate that, even if it's unexpected, or I could do X, Y, or Z to help with that. And breaking it down for me into thinking, okay, I can do it if it goes well, but I can also cope if it doesn't go well, makes it like almost like a win-win situation. Like, you're going to be okay whatever happens. So I moved into this new office, and by doing that, the business grew so much so that within a year I went from that office to basically now a small industrial unit, which is already filling up, which I'm trying not to think about too much because I've only just moved in there within the last 6 months. But that was an even bigger step, because obviously you've got more to lose. And like, I've got a lady called Jess that comes in and works for me every day. And suddenly I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got like so much more financial responsibility now. It's not just me sitting drawing little cartoons. But I'm like, no, like, I can do this. I have been doing this, and I will continue to do this. And if it doesn't go the way it's expected, I'll work the problem. That's one of my other favorite phrases, actually. Have you ever watched or read The Martian? If you haven't seen it, a man gets stranded on Mars, and basically he problem solves the entire thing, and it's all a bit crazy. And the people come back to rescue him, but at the last minute something isn't going quite to plan. And there's this one phrase, I don't know if it's in the film, it's in the book version of it, and she goes, okay, we've got to work the problem. And I've really latched onto that phrase, because it's not ignoring that there's an obstacle or a problem. You're going, right, okay, this is the situation, I'm going to work it out now. It's not like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Oh no, he's going to die on this planet. It's, we're going to take it step by step and work through it. With like, I think as people, well, me especially, I'm very prone to being like, I need to have it all worked out right now in a neat little package with a bow, and I need to know exactly what I'm going to do here, 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 and here. And I think for me personally, that's not helpful, because often it's not practical, and it just puts an added pressure on you to have the entire thing or situation worked out, when you can't have, because you haven't taken the first step to know what the second step is. But yeah, so I think, like, what I'm trying to say is, I found that believing in yourself is not feeling like you have to have everything worked out, but believing that you're capable of dealing with whatever comes your way.
I think that's really good, really good. Donna.
Well, do you know, I really liked what Jane was saying earlier about different moments in your life, and how, you know, it's not static, the belief in yourself. So sometimes it may be really strong, and other times you might not have that belief there. And I think that's actually quite an important thing to focus on, because there's been times where I've really believed in myself. I've actually found that as I've become older, and I don't know if perhaps Jane sees that, but it's as I've become older that that belief has waned slightly. So, you know, when I was a teenager, when I was in my early 20s, everything for me was a given. Yeah, I can make this happen. I can, you know, I was very lucky like that, in that I did have a lot of belief. I was very gung-ho about things. And in some ways, it was a blessing and a curse that I achieved everything I wanted to as soon as I did. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there were setbacks along the way, and lots of hard work that I had to put in, and all the rest of it. But then obviously now I'm independent, aren't I? So I'm not doing what I initially, you know, I sort of grew beyond like what I was doing, and then I wanted to do something else. But actually, the second time round, whereas the belief I'd been really strong in my belief the first time, being a commercial nutritionist, in terms of being an independent one, and as I started to become older, my belief wasn't as strong. And I found it quite scary and quite worrying. And I used to have lots of conversations, because my husband used to say, "Oh, you should do this for yourself." And I would always say, "Absolutely not. No way. I'm not doing this for myself. No way. You must be crazy." I really was adamant that I was not going to do this. And it was, I suppose, voices in my head saying, "No, you're not good enough for that. You can't do that. You're not." But ironically, I was working for one of the best feed brands in the country, and they obviously thought I was good enough. But yet here I was saying, "But I'm not good enough to work for myself." So it was only by accident, actually, that I became an independent nutritionist, because people were asking me for my services, and so I went, okay then, and I started to do that, and then I realized, hang on a minute, you can't just do this, like, you've got to have insurance and all the rest of it. So then I got that for the purposes of doing that, and then I said, "Well, Donnie, you can't just do this free of charge. You've got to actually charge for your time in order to pay for the insurance and the fuel and all the rest of it." So I did that. So this is what I'm saying, I didn't have the belief like I had, and it just sort of, the belief had to grow more. And I guess you know, I wasn't working at the time with someone like yourself, Rhea, or someone like Jane, who possibly would definitely could have guided me a lot more to believe in myself. But I just think it's important never to look at people who you might hold in high esteem and think, wow, you know, that they can just do it because they've got belief in themselves, because actually it's not always like that. And those people actually, from what you see in front of you as being really strong and really rock solid and all the rest of it, when they go home at night, they've probably got all the same fears and emotions and all the rest of it. But I guess the difference is they just do something about it, and just take the first baby step, whatever that may be, even if they don't realize they're actually doing it, a little bit like myself. But yeah, I think Jane made a really good point on that. earlier. And do you know what? I have done some other crazy stuff in my past. I bet that doesn't surprise you, Ria.
Not a bit. Not a bit.
So I had to have, when I was at uni, I needed some extra money on the side. I bet you're all wondering where this is going now.
I'm excited for this story. I don't know where it's going at all.
And I was really worried about operating a till, because, you know, most sort of students, what would be the logical thing to do, like some sort of Saturday job or something? And I was just so paranoid that I wouldn't be able to add up fast enough. It never occurred to me that the till would add up for me. And actually I wasn't that bad at maths either, so I don't know why this was a fear, but nevertheless it was. I decided that is not how I wanted to earn money. And then I thought, well, what, you know, seriously, Donna, what else is available to me? And I thought, Donna, what's the worst possible thing that you could do that you don't believe you could do? And I actually remember thinking that in my head, other than the till. I just didn't like that idea. And I said, I know, join the army. So Ria's actually laughed. Yes. So I joined the Officers Training Corps. So every other weekend, every Tuesday night, I was in the army. Now, guys, if you know me, and I don't want to be stereotypical about things here, but I am going to be. I was kind of, imagine as a kid, you're very sort of airy fairy, very sort of slight girl, really not built for the army. You wouldn't expect. I mean, when I told my mum and dad, they just burst out laughing. It was just unfathomable. And Ria, if you could see her face right now, it also looks unfathomable. But I just thought this would be the worst possible thing I could do. And actually, if I could prove to myself that I could do it, I'd be able to do anything in life. And so I went off, I did it. I nearly killed myself in the process with like a Bergen, and we did live shooting. You know, there was times it wasn't even blanks. I was a liability. The helmet didn't even sit on my head properly. Like, I really have a vivid memory of a sergeant major holding my helmet up above my eyes whilst I was shooting, saying like, you've got to look where you're firing, Case. But I did it. And I won a trophy for it. Best effort. My dad likes to remind me that it wasn't actually for ability, it was just for effort. But I don't care. I got paid. And I didn't have to work on a till. So
I would have taken the till.
yeah, but you know, the other enticement was I used to earn £60 in fuel just driving there before I even started earning. That was, you know, when you're a student, that's quite something.
But you nearly killed yourself and others, I assume.
Do you know, I used to look like I'd been battered when I'd get back from the weekends. My entire body was covered in bruises. My knees I could barely feel because we used to have to kneel on concrete. I was a wreck.
That was absolutely the last thing I expected to come out of Donna's mouth.
I love Donna.
I know, but I just think, you know, and that's the thing, never judge a book by its cover. You never
Absolutely.
what they're capable of. But I totally understand why Emily thinks that, because you just wouldn't have me down for that at all. But do you know what? It wasn't about proving anything to anyone else. It was about proving something to myself. And actually, when I used to do the assault courses and stuff, I was normally one of the sort of last people standing at the end of the assault course, which again is a surprise to myself, but I'm just stubborn. That's my problem.
I don't know how Jane's going to follow this. I mean, the only thing that would entice me to go in the army would be nice officers. I'm sorry, Noel, but it's the truth.
Well, to be fair, that's how I met Michael. He's now my husband. It worked. You see, you've got to remember, I was at agricultural college. It was mostly females, to be fair. It was mostly equine degrees. There were not many men hanging out there. So took matters into my own hands, met my husband, happily ever after.
Learn how to shoot things.
Yes.
Was Michael the one holding up your helmet as you were shooting live rounds?
No, it wasn't.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness.
Actually, but Yeah, good times. I've got good memories of that. I think I shall PM you all a photo of that later.
Definitely.
I don't know how Jane's going to follow this, but I mean,
I'm absolutely speechless now, I think. And I think a lot of the self-belief, I mean, we've all heard of imposter syndrome, and that, you know, is all tied up with the self-belief. And I think one of the things that I struggled with when I first started out doing what I'm doing now is that I'm a horse rider and I'm a horse owner with many years experience, but I'm not a competitive rider. I've done very little equestrian competition. So I did have this kind of imposter syndrome of how can I coach people from a mindset point of view who are, you know, kind of going to be high performance level. But then, you know, when I quickly realized that coaches don't have to do what the people they're coaching do, and that's fine. You know, many very successful sports coaches literally couldn't do what the people they're coaching are doing. You know, the people coach Olympians, but they've never, you know, won an Olympic medal themselves. So, you know, obviously a lot of successful horse riders do go into coaching, but they're not necessarily the best coaches. They might, but they're not necessarily. You know, it's two different skills. The actual equestrianism sport skill is very different to the mindset coaching skill. So I had to get over that issue. And also because I had come from an NHS background where the service is free at the point of delivery, it was a big deal to actually at the end of a session kind of say, well, you know, you're going to have to pay me now. Obviously we did agree the cost, the price, etc. before. I didn't just leave it till the end of the session and then pounce it on them. But I did feel very uncomfortable charging for my services for some considerable time because I was used to delivering a service free at the point of delivery. So that's a big challenge.
Was there a point when that changed, when you sort of did start to go, no, actually I can coach people up to the very top, and then also I'm comfortable charging for this?
Just with experience that, you know, initially most of the riders worked with were leisure riders who were lacking confidence, but then, you know, a small handful started coming in who were professional riders or who were amateur riders wanting to be serious competitors. And I realised that work I was doing with them was just as successful. So nowadays, more and more, mostly say serious amateurs, but competing at a significant level, and that's really exciting. And just gradually, as with my, you know, years of experience and more different riders that I've worked with, then my personal self-belief has grown. And it takes a hit every now and then. You know, I can't kind of claim to have a magic wand. So every now and then, you know, things don't work out with somebody, and then, you know, your self-belief does take a hit, and you kind of think, oh God, you know, I'm useless at this, and I don't deserve anything, and then you have to kind of give yourself a big shake and say, no, wait a minute, you know, it didn't work out with that one individual, but that doesn't generalize to everybody.
No, definitely. I mean, I know of people that you've helped massively. I know of one who sent me a message today about it, actually. And yeah, and we do as humans, we focus on that one negative out of
absolutely, yeah,
so many positives, don't we, which can then knock our self-belief, but we just seem to ignore all the good bits.
And then on a personal level, not a business level or anything, for years and years I believed that I couldn't sing. I don't know where it came from, probably from some teacher at primary school, you know, whatever, I don't know. But I believed I couldn't sing. And, you know, every now and then somebody would say, you know, do you want to join in with this? And I would say, well, I'll have a go, but I can't sing. And, you know, don't expect me to kind of make anything pleasant in the way of noise. And then I had a couple of experiences where one was I joined in like a pop-up choir at Christmas locally. Another was in a kind of another class that involved some singing. And two completely independent people, strangers, kind of just happened to say to me, "Oh, you've got quite a nice voice." And I'm like, "Oh my goodness, where did that come from?" I can't sing, so they can't possibly be talking to me. And it turned out they were talking to me. And so it turns out that, yeah, I can sing, and if I practiced and I studied it a bit, and if I had some singing lessons, I could be an adequate singer, So I can do this thing that for years I was telling myself that I couldn't do. And because I was telling myself that I couldn't do it, I believed I couldn't do it. So therefore I didn't do it. Whereas in fact, I could have a go and have some fun and enjoy it.
No, definitely.
And that's one example of how self-belief by what we tell ourselves affects our behavior.
If you had some tips, I'll start with you, Jane, and we'll work around the other way, to help people believe themselves a little bit more, or I was going to say a trick, but it's not a trick. It is a mindset shift, isn't it? What tips could you give someone to help them?
Sometimes these things, these kind of negative things that we tell ourselves, sometimes just one tip that comes to mind is to write them down. And sometimes by actually seeing them on paper, you see them for what they really are. And if you kind of have a notebook with two sides, and you can write your strengths on one side and your challenges on the other, you actually see that you've got a hell of a lot more strengths than you have challenges usually. But seeing them for what they really are can be quite empowering. And as I said earlier, is learning and working on the self-acceptance of I accept myself as a unique human being.
I love that.
And also along with that, accepting other people as unique human beings.
Yeah.
So unconditional self-acceptance and unconditional acceptance of others.
No, perfect.
And that is quite powerful, really.
What about you, Emily?
So I think my main one, and probably one that I need to do a bit more, is being patient with yourself, with the times that you haven't believed in yourself enough, or you've not got it right. I think it touches a little bit on what Jane was saying just then, but about you were saying earlier, weren't you, Jane, about that we are infallible human beings. We make mistakes, but also knowing that it's also okay to be scared. Being brave isn't sort of ignoring the fact that things are scary. I've often heard that it's the way a thought is wired in your brain. I think it's easier to convince yourself, if you're feeling nervous, that you're actually excited, because trying to convince yourself that you're calm doesn't compute in your brain. And I mean, I'm no scientist or expert, but I've heard that can wreak havoc in your brain when you're trying to sort of convince yourself that you're an opposite feeling. But there's a quote, I think it was by Nelson Mandela originally, and I'm gonna butcher the words, I'm sorry. Courage isn't the absence of fear, but the realization that there's something greater than your fears on the other side. So yeah, I think those would be my 2 points: being patient with yourself, and sort of also knowing that it's not about not being scared, it's about doing it anyway.
I'm going to get that quote up and see how close you were, because I think you were very close with that.
I wrote it on my post recently, so I'd have hoped I'd remembered it a bit better. I think it was a bit longer.
Donna, what tips have you got?
Well, thinking back to when I was younger, and I have used this a few times in my life, some people would say it's a bit, I don't know, woo-woo, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. The whole idea of a vision board, if you think of the fact that I was looking at that certificate every single day, and it just became a given in my mind. I really do like the idea of, you putting some images together or some quotes of of what it is you're trying to achieve. And of course, it might not be you in that image. Let's say you're wanting to ride around a novice course, for example. You might get a photo of the course in question, or someone riding around it, or those sorts of things, whatever it is. I think that's a really good tip. I know some people don't like that sort of thing, but I do. And the other thing would be, as wonderful as it is to look to the future, and as important and helpful as it is, don't forget to remember the past. And what I mean by that is to also, we can be so eager to achieve more all the time that we don't see what we've already achieved. And actually, when we can see what we've already achieved, it actually empowers us to go on and achieve more. So, take stock to think, "Oh, what have I done? What have I achieved?" And again, I know there will be people listening to this who might be thinking, "Crikey, what have I achieved?" And I absolutely 110% guarantee that whoever's listening to this, there is stuff that you have achieved that is important and does matter. And quite frankly, the way I feel this year, it could be just making it through homeschooling unscathed, like anything like that. There's so many different things where you could have added value to your life and other people's lives, where you've had to be tough, where you've had to be strong. So take a moment to take stock of the things that you've done well already in your lives, and then also, like I say, have that vision for the future and really sort of focus in on what it is you're trying to achieve. Because I think sometimes people can become a bit wishy-washy about what they're trying to achieve, and they can't actually pinpoint, ironically, what it is they're trying to achieve. So get really clear, because if you can get really clear, then that's even a step in itself, I think. So those would probably be my sort of top tips. Oh, and the one final thing I'm going to add, because I've recently started running and I hate it with a passion.
I didn't know you were running.
Yeah, I know I need to work on my aerobic fitness more. So I was like, right, okay, I'm going to run. And let's just say that it's not about waiting to become motivated, because that motivation may never come. It's discipline that is also very important, and sometimes you just have to do it, whatever it is. So like when I've been going out on these runs, trust me, there's been days I had no motivation to start it whatsoever, other than I knew that I wanted to, but I wasn't motivated, if that makes sense. Discipline is an important thing, just doing it regardless, even though you don't feel like doing something. Don't wait to be motivated, and eventually the motivation steps in, but discipline tends to come first. And I read that in a business book, and it's about habit, isn't it? And it's all interlinked with these things. So that's my other final tip.
All excellent tips. Didn't know you were running. I'll quiz you about that later. Now I have to say that when I was at school, I was also a firm belief I couldn't run because I wasn't particularly fast and I really hated it. And we used to have to do circuits around the school where I went, and I would me and a select group of others would just hide in one of the doorways until other people had done 2 laps, and then just join the final lap because I didn't enjoy it. So then when I decided I needed to get slightly fitter and did the Couch to 5K, I was of the firm belief I couldn't run, and I do look like a lame duck, and I sweat out my eye sockets, and I'm not a good runner. But as you say, you just do it. I mean, I haven't done it for ages now, but when I could do the whole 30 minutes without being sick, was a win. So it's anyway. On that jolly note, I'll ask all of you for where people can find you online. So if you can tell us your website and what social media platforms you're on, people can track you down and give you a follow. So let's start with Jane again.
Okay, I am, thanks Ria, I'm at Confident Riding Scotland on Instagram. I'm Horse Riding with Confidence Scotland on Facebook, and my website is horseridingwithconfidencescotland.co.uk.
Thank you. And Emily?
I'm emily-cole.com, and then it's Emily Cole Illustrations on Facebook and Instagram.
Fab. And Donna?
I am at the Horse Feed Guru on Instagram and Facebook, and it's www.thehorsefeedguru.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much, ladies. It's been so fun to chat to you as always, and we'll catch up soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.